I am so honored to have been a member of the Southern Surgical Association for the past 24 years, yet alone to serve as your treasurer for 6 years, and now have served as your 134th president for this past year. My only conflicts are monies I've received from book editorial positions. No such honor goes without paying tribute to those who have shepherded your path along the way. I've had many such mentors in my life, and I've been indebted to them. As I wrote in my Association of Academic Surgery presidential speech, I have an attitude of gratitude. On the top, you see the mentors I had at the University of Florida, as well as Dr. Charles Bagwell on the second row. In particular, Dr. Ted Copeland, who gave me my first chance at University of Florida, and Dr. Kirby Blant, who was my residency coordinator, are both past presidents and honorary fellows of the Southern. Both have afforded me multiple opportunities, guidance, and friendship throughout the years. I spent a year and a half in the lab of Dr. Chip Shoba on the middle top row, who jettisoned my research career. I also had the good fortune to operate extensively with Dr. Woodward after he retired as chairman in Florida, but stayed on staff. Dr. Kent Westbrook in the center gave me my start at Arkansas, and Dr. Charles Balch, who's next to him and to the right, has been a longtime supporter and continues to create innovative programs all over the world. Dr. Fabrizio Michelasi and I worked on the American Board of Surgery together and on the Complex Surgical Board together, and he taught me the art of negotiation. Dr. Jack Hollenbach taught me the subtle art of critique. He and I sat on the back row many times discussing the papers being presented. Dr. L.D. Britt and many others have been lifelong mentors, supporters, and allies, including Dr. Winchester, Dr. Wood, and Dr. Lerner. Dr. Courtney Townsend has taken me under his wing at UTMB and supported me in various efforts at the university in Galveston. All but a few of these supporters are Southern members. I thank many more, especially in this society, who have been part of my lifelong surgical family. I am indebted to so many more partners, collaborators, researchers, nurses, data managers, PhDs in my lab, and fellows who have made the journey not only more exciting, but fun and productive. Most of all, I'm thankful for my family and unwavering support at UTMB, my surgical family. And here are my fellows, many of them, and also my colleagues at a 10-year program that we did for the University of Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Kansas. And to our super assistants, 7 years, Lindsay Overman has been with us at the front desk in the treasurer's office, and this is Jennifer Perez, who's made my life worth living at the University of Texas Medical Branch. She's been awesome. And of course, you can't go anywhere without thanking your family. This is my daughter Sadie on the left, my daughter Spencer and Sky on the right, and all of my family and community support. And of course, here's Mom Klimberg and cousin Marilyn, who have been so good to me. And the love of my life, Drake, my first and only grandson. Now, the 14th Dalai Lama said that a sign of a good leader is not how many followers they have, but how many leaders you create. That is true of my mentors, and one can see the legacy that has been brought about many members of the Southern, that of chairmen who have begotten chairpersons, cancer center directors, section chiefs, researchers, and innovators. Nowhere is this truer than in the legacy of Dr. Copeland and Dr. Bland. You see my surgical graduating class here. Dr. Lee Ellis, a member of the Southern on the left, who is professor of surgery at the Department of Surgical Oncology at MD Anderson Cancer Center and the Rubin Distinguished Chair in Gastroenterology Cancer Research and the Executive Director for Translational Research, global academic programs. He's been honored many times for his research, including the American Association of Cancer Research and the American Surgical Association. To my left is Dr. Tim Yateman, who is a surgical oncologist and is the Gibbs Cancer Center Director in Greenville, South Carolina. Dr. Copeland always said that he didn't just train academicians. On the far right is Dr. Mark McCoy, who was the premier cardiovascular surgeon in private practice in Northwest Arkansas, who has unfortunately passed during this pandemic. Dr. Copeland and Dr. Band just trained good general surgeons as well as academicians. This model of training has worked well and produced many great surgeon scientists throughout the time. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted this type of training and has fast-tracked what I would call teletransformation. That is, accelerated use of global telesolutions and the transformation of our surgical care and education that has been brought about largely by the pandemic and what I'd like to talk about today. Pandemics have necessitated and accelerated change throughout time, and a good example is that of the bubonic or Black Plague. After the Black Plague came the Italian Renaissance, which contributed so much to our classic music, artwork, and literature. It also brought about more modern labor movements and many improvements in medicine. There was more attention paid to observation of the patient's health as well as anatomy. There was more of a focus on public health and sanitation and decreasing infection spread. Better hospitals and better conditions for the poor were brought about due to the many deaths with the plague and perhaps by improvement in the medical ethics of the time. The shortage of labor empowered the workers' demands and eventually pulled down the oppressive serfdom at the time. In 1918, there was another pandemic, which was called the Spanish flu, but really didn't originate in Spain. Because Spain was neutral in the war, they reported on the pandemic more often, and therefore it became known as the Spanish flu. Influenza A infected more than 500 million people worldwide, a third of the population at the time, and killed 50 million people. 675,000 patients died of influenza A in the United States, which percentage-wise is actually more than Americans then died of COVID-19. After the 1918 pandemic, we had an improved understanding of viruses in general and influenza viruses specifically, but there was a big investment in advancement in vaccines and treatments. There was an improved overall awareness of preparedness, planning, and responses to such pandemics. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been unconscionable the number of deaths and cases worldwide, with over 653 million cases worldwide and over 6 million deaths, and the U.S. being hit the hardest with over 100 million cases of COVID-19 and over 1 million deaths. The fact is, it's been an unbelievable pandemic, and it's affected so much of what we do, a lot for bad, but some for good. Some of the changes in medical care that happened after the pandemic has been ER visits have been down 40%. Preventative screening has reported down as much as 80%, especially for breast and colorectal. Virtual visits have been promoted and covered by insurance. This promotion of virtual visits has highlighted issues around the effect on the business model of care. Medical licensure, especially across state lines, continues to be an obstacle that blocks the progression of virtual care. These medical legal questions really center around who's to blame and who's responsible if something goes wrong. Our traditional training has been one of one-on-one, where we see one, do one, teach one. This approach is very limiting as it slows the globalization of new innovations. For example, the first laparoscopic surgery on humans was performed in 1910, but didn't really start in earnest until 1985. The philosophy of traditional training has been advantage of real-life scenarios, hands-on learning, and human interaction. This is an emotional transfer of human touch and social activity. Limitations have been constraints and other human factors that bring about a huge variability between teachers, learners, and even patients. The substance of traditional training has been paper. There has been literally millions of papers, multiple surgical books by myself and my mentors, Copeland and Bland, countless members of this prestigious society, and many others. It's been mainly the printed word that modern training was built on. So-called modern training has its pros and cons also. Modern training has more dependable models, homogeneous scenarios, consistent settings, as well as less biased assessments with really no time constraints. One can complete the training in your own time at any time convenient to you. However, you lose flexibility. Training is less personalized and does not lend itself to variability. Virtual learning is where the teacher and the learner are separated by time and space. In 1922, Penn State first broadcast radio courses. In 1950, Iowa State introduced TV courses. In 1953, the University of Houston offered TV correspondence courses. Today, there are many virtual learning offerings where any surgeon from university to rural setting, whether practicing surgeon, resident, or student, can go to learn about surgery. The Surgical Council on Resident Education SCORE curriculum, introduced in 2006, is a voluntary consortium of 6 organizations, including the American Board of Surgery, the American College of Surgeons, the American Surgical Association, the Association of Program Directors in Surgery, and the Association of Surgical Education and the Residency Review Committee. The effort was championed by Southern member Dr. Robert Bell and later by Southern member Dr. Mary Klingensmith, who has really taken it to the next level. Now there are questions, videos, and weekly curriculum to follow. SCORE brought about together the major regulatory organizations, the major professional organizations, and the senior academic organizations in surgery, and the major surgical education organizations. The ACS also has an extensive video library with access to virtual operations or anatomy. Video libraries of specialty societies are also prevalent, with the American Society of Breast Surgeons having an extensive online presence of breast procedural videos, as well as online lecture videos and question banks, Breast Educational Self-Assessment Program, BSAP, for fellows as well as members. Our own Southern member, Dr. Rick Green, shown here, has a podcast called Behind the Knife, as well as one called Speaking of Surgical Oncology, which is a product of the Annals of Surgical Oncology, the editor-in-chief being our own Southern Council member, Kelly McMasters. The Southern and its members have had a very active role in remodeling education. Other virtually unlimited venues include YouTube, where you can find almost any operation performed in 5 different ways with diagrams of all the important anatomy. Twitter has summaries and virtual abstracts of important articles almost instantaneously. However, a rigorous peer review of the literature on the impact of social media on education, recruitment, and professionalism was carried out by Sterling et al. In 29 research papers, they discovered that while YouTube and wiki sites were more regularly used for technical issues, skills, and self-efficacy, Twitter and podcasts were frequently used to engage and improve education. However, this did not seem to translate or transfer into more frequent, sustained knowledge or a comfort level with a particular platform. but it seems more tempting given the chance to engage with, share, and comment on these resources via social media. In the bottom right here, Dr. Chu and myself and other Southern members have finished an online global book in collaboration with the ACS aimed at managing breast care in low middle income countries, which will hopefully be online soon. Department of Surgery has changed their local educational formats as well. Virtual grand rounds have opened a wealth of knowledge throughout the United States and even internationally. The cost in time and money has been minimized such that more speakers can share their expertise on a wider variety of topics. At the University of Texas Medical Branch, we also do virtual learning for M&M. UTMB has 5 different hospitals that we staff with residents, attendings, and medical students. Virtual M&M can be accessed by all campuses. We also have daily morning report where all of the prior day's emergency room admissions are presented online with history, physical, x-rays, and labs. Numerous multidisciplinary attendings sign on to discuss the cases. Cases are discussed in an oral board fashion, resulting in good preparation for such. This also allows for appropriate disposition of cases to specialty teams as needed. Even once the current public health crisis has passed, there might be long-lasting effects on online education in all specialty areas. Today, everybody discusses wellness, and we, like all residency programs, use online mandated GME lecture series. One of the newest Southern members, Dr. Abe Deanda, inducted today, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery at UTMB, started pub trivia for the surgery department at UTMB. It's a way of everybody getting together, including students, residents, fellows, nurses, pump techs, significant others, and attendings, or whoever wishes to participate. It really was a way of interacting and producing some well-being. We are always talking about well-being, and this was a nice way to do it. Unfortunately, this in-person gathering stopped with the pandemic. This put our surgical force at risk. In one cross-sectional survey-based study of residents, fellows, and attendings physicians from Stony Brook across 26 specialties during and after the first wave of pandemic in 2020, rates of depression were over 6%, nearly 20% for burnout, and almost 7% for suicidal ideation, presumably due to the extreme isolation. So residents and attending started to participate in online trivia each Saturday night as a way to cope with this isolation. This eventually spawned a rivalry with the University of Virginia and their team led by my daughter Sadie down here on the bottom, as well as here you see Abe in the middle, and Dr. Tyler's daughter's here, and he's on here somewhere, and lots of participation by residents and University of Virginia students. Let me just say we didn't always win, but we had a good time, and this lasted until we were out and about again when the pandemic allowed us to. After the 2020 Coalition for Physician Accountability work groups determined that there should be no in-person interviews for the new 2021 residency program positions, much had to be learned about the use of virtual learning tools for unexpected purposes, such as planning and conducting applicant interviews. The ACS Special Committee released extensive guidelines and recommendations on interview and program information strategies focused on the virtual nature of all interactions with residents and fellowship candidates for this coming cycle. But most programs adopted their own approach in response to the advice from the AAMC and the National Residency Matching Program webinars. Distance learning is a method of studying in which lectures or classes are broadcast utilizing computer and telecommunication technology. And it is for training outside of a training center. It is feasible for any connected location and is self-paced learning And this again has been going on for a long time. Distance learning has really come into its own at the beginning of the pandemic. By 2018, 98% of public universities had some sort of online presence and a virtual platform. Southern member Dr. Doug Tyler, immediate past president of the Society of Surgical Oncology, and colleagues expanded the footprint of the SSO, utilizing a virtual platform to advance surgical therapies. This allows access not only at the time of the meeting, but unlimited repeat viewing. Another incredible example of distance learning is the Cancer Expert Now Molecular Tumor Board that was started by Drs. Ning Liao and Southern member Dr. Charles Balch. This, as well as Dr. William Gradishar and myself, and a host of Chinese and American breast experts meet over Zoom and over 40,000 viewers per week to discuss breast cancer cases. Recently, we expanded to produce the 7th 3-day summit where 1.2 million viewers logged on to hear lectures from world leaders in breast cancer. The UTMB and the Smith Laboratory for Surgical Training, Assessment, and Research, LSTAR, has been accredited as a comprehensive AEI by the American College of Surgeons. It promotes the field of simulation-based surgical education while meeting the educational demands of a wide range of students. The ACS AEI program's overarching objectives are to improve surgical patient safety, support surgeons' certification maintenance needs, address the competencies that all surgeons and surgical residents must attain and demonstrate, and improve access to cutting-edge surgical education. Without jeopardizing patient safety or comfort, AEIs give trainees the chance to practice new abilities and receive quick feedback. Ingenious research is being carried out by AEIs to advance simulation-based surgical teaching. The first laparoscopic skills training hardware and software package was made accessible by Rosser and colleagues, and it was very basic and was delivered to institutions worldwide and featured simulated tabletop hardware as well as Top Gun laparoscopic skill and suturing CD-ROMs. These trainers were basic and consisted of placing red or green rings on pegs and basic suturing with the aim of improving hand-to-eye coordination. Such deliberate practice has been shown by randomized trials to improve the quality of resident performance for cholecystectomy by more than threefold. Simple trainers have morphed into virtual reality simulation programs, including robotic. Current versions of these simulators use a sophisticated force feedback system that offers genuine haptic input when carrying out significant portions of clinical operations. The incorporation of instrument switching, different scope views, procedural errors, and problems raises the experience's accuracy to a level that is comparable to that of the clinical operation being mimicked. Excellent in practical clinical skills necessitates effective data collection and open communication. Verbal feedback and human observation have been the mainstays of information exchange and have many benefits. However, there were several chances to influence performance evaluation thanks to the developments in data capture, storage, retrieval, and analysis. Dr. Carla Pugh and others have applied sensor-based metrics for evaluating the technical and cognitive components of practical abilities. This has been accomplished using audio and video glasses, magnetic motion tracking, capture laparoscopic and external video feeds, EEG sensors, mental imagery, and or functional neuroimaging, providing directed feedback for specific movements. Studies on laparoscopic cholecystectomies, Nissen fundoplication, hemicolectomy, and colonoscopy show fewer errors, faster procedural time, higher efficiencies, and superior tissue handling. This can also be accomplished with laparoscopic or robotic simulators. The ACS has coordinated hand skills courses with live models as well as cadavers for many years, and this is just one example of our hands-on course in 2019 for oncoplastic surgery. And people from around the world come together at great expense, and cadavers are expensive, and the technology needed to handle the cadavers are expensive. They're very timely and costly endeavors and must be performed in conjunction with sites that have access to large cadaver facilities. Learners must attend in person at great cost and time away from their practice. Led by Dr. Alex Perez here on the far right, the director of our L-Star AEA at our institution, and Dr. Taylor Williams, who is in the middle, was our first simulation fellow, and myself developed a program called TEAMS, or Teleeducation Assisted Mentorship in Surgery. It was originally aimed at serving rural surgeons when the pandemic began. A unique approach to surgical skill training is TEAMS, which combines one-on-one mentoring with longitudinal assessment with remote, practical, high-fidelity, and inexpensive simulation-based modeling and teaching. The simulation model, instrumentation, and other course materials required for hands-on practice are shipped to the individual learner and course instructors. The learners begin by watching pre-recorded lectures on a website at their own pace. Learners then attend a virtual meeting utilizing laptop software. The learners then view a pre-recorded clinical video of the training technique being performed on the patient. An instructor demonstrates the targeted technique on the simulation model mailed to both the learner and the mentor. The mentor then coaches the learner through the surgical technique on the model. A single breast model may bundle multiple procedures. The learners are then supported over time by the mentor to adapt the technique. The first TEAMS course was supported by the North and South Texas ACS and aimed at rural surgeons with learners and mentors from around the world, including Bahrain, Greece, China, Spain, Brazil, and Bahrain. The second and third courses were performed during the pandemic for the breast fellows in the United States from the L-Star AAI and showed improved confidence with procedures. And here's just an online, and they showed improved confidence for those participating, over 120 breast fellows. Recently, we have been using this to teach ultrasound to our various sites to our residents. For more experienced learners who want to learn newer techniques where models are not sufficient or available, there's telementoring. This is a relationship facilitated by telecommunication technology in which experts provide guidance to a less experienced learner from a remote location. The mentees are competent, but telementoring is used to help the mentee adopt a new technique and to facilitate the rapid adoption of a new or advanced technique. The truly medical connectivity, as no surgeon should ever have to operate alone. With the right equipment, we can perform telestration as well, where we can demonstrate proper dissection of planes in real time with a distant location, and this just gives the learner a little bit more access to expert technology rather than operating alone and trying to learn a new procedure alone. With such advanced technology, communication needs to be precise and closed. And this just demonstrates we need to be very precise in this communication, and this is one of the things we have to be very clear on in developing this kind of procedure. We really have been fortunate at UTMB to have telecollaboration, not only within the UTMB network, but also with the ETCTN or the TEC-CTN, which is NCI Phase 1 and 2 trials led by Southern member Dr. Funda Merrick Bernstam, who has put together a Texas collaboration consisting of MD Anderson, UTMB, UTN San Antonio, and UT Austin, with the aim to promote access to Phase 1 and 2 clinical trials throughout the state. Dr. Selwyn Vickers, our past president and council member, tweeted in the Global Quest to Cure Cancer, enhanced collaboration to advance patient-centric international clinical trials, education, and quality care makes a world of difference. Hopefully such collaboration will break down a lot of the barriers and even out the playing field in many ways. Emerging from the pandemic, clinical trials have changed for the better, and with more of a focus on teaching all people, no matter where they live or their circumstance. There is increased awareness on the geographical barriers, increased utilization of telehealth and electronic consent. Staffing challenges brought about by the pandemic can be overcome by virtual screening even. Southern members, Drs. Marion Klingensmith, as well as Dr. Bob Higgins, were appointed to co-chair. For 4 years, we have had and they were co-chairs. For 4 years, we have had the women's breakfast, which has now, for the last 2 years, been the Jedi breakfast. For the last 2 years, we have added a disparities lecture in the program. Dr. Rhonda Henry Tillman will be this year's addressee. Led by Dr. Klingensmith, Dr. Robert Higgins, and myself, we wrote a grant funded by the ACS to provide mentorship and leadership development opportunities for young surgeons that come from diverse backgrounds within the first 5 years, as well as a few more senior ones. We wanted to identify participants for the leadership program and encourage these scholars toward future membership in the Southern. We aimed to improve the visibility and reputation of the Southern as a thought leader in DEI, member recruitment, mentoring, networking, and professional development. We proposed to measure the program's outcomes through participant surveys that would track the trajectory of these participants and scholars. A lot of Southern members volunteered as sponsors, and we had stellar applications. The 6 selected applicants chose among a host of volunteer mentors, including Drs. Robert Higgins, Gretchen Purcell, Jackson Lint Johnson, John Stewart IV, Erica Sutton, and Gib Upchurch. Others contributed lectures and discussions, which can be found on our website. William Pollard said, "Learning and innovation go hand in hand, and the arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient tomorrow." We need to keep this ball rolling and learn from what we've done in the past so that we can invent the future together. However, technology cannot replace what the Southern has. The Southern has been one of my favorite meetings because it feels more like family. You know, if you need something or some advice, that you could probably call on any member of the Southern, and they'd willingly help and have helped many times without letting those they help know even. Thank you to my Southern extended family. I'm so grateful that I'm a member, and even more grateful that I have been your president for this past year. Uh-oh.